All right, let's talk about this science of influence. You've probably heard the term dark psychology thrown around a lot. Well, today, we're going to cut through all that noise. We're going to break down some genuine research-backed techniques that actually explain how human behavior is shaped. So let's just dive right in.
You know, if you've spent any time online, you've seen the hype. But the source material we're looking at makes a really bold promise right up front. It basically says, forget all the flashy, clickbait tricks. It's time to focus on the real strategies, the ones that are actually backed by science.
But hang on, before we go any further, the source itself puts up a huge stop sign, a critical warning. These techniques are really, really powerful, and if you use them the wrong way, they can be super manipulative. We're talking about damaging relationships, destroying trust. So this isn't about learning to play games with people. It's about understanding the deep mechanics of how we interact, for better or for worse. So the source actually lays out 30 different techniques. Now, we're not going to go through every single one, of course. Instead, we're going to unpack the big ideas and look at some of the most powerful examples, and we'll group them into a few key themes.
So where do you even start? Well, you start at the foundation. This first set of techniques is all about building a connection. I mean, think about it. Before you can influence anyone, you have to build some kind of rapport, some kind of trust.
First up is mirroring. This one is so subtle, but it's incredibly powerful. All it is non-verbally saying, hey, I'm on the same page as you. You just subtly reflect someone's posture or their gestures. You know, they lean in, you lean in a little. It taps into this deep part of our brain that just loves what's familiar. It creates this subconscious feeling of safety and similarity, and that makes people way more receptive to you. And that idea of being in sync leads us right here to a couple of amazing listening techniques. First, there's reflective listening. This is more than just hearing someone. You prove you get it by saying their point back to them in your own words. Then you can take it a step further with emotional labeling, where you actually name the feeling behind their words. Using these two together, it's like a secret weapon for de-escalating arguments because it makes the other person feel completely, totally heard. Okay, so all of that builds up to something a little more advanced, pacing and leading. First, you pace by matching the other person's vibe, their tone of voice, their energy, their mood. Once you've got that rapport going and you feel like you're in sync, that's when you can gently lead the conversation in a new direction. The whole shift feels totally natural, not forced at all. All right, so you've built a connection. Now we get to the next level, techniques that actively shape how people see the world. This is all about influencing their perception of reality, of value, and even of their own choices.
Oh man, we have all fallen for this one. The scarcity principle. It plays directly on our fear of missing out, or FOMO. As soon as something is framed as rare or limited, our brain just automatically thinks it's more valuable. And then we feel this urgent pull to act now before it's gone forever.
And here's the perfect example you see literally everywhere. That phrase, selling out fast, that creates the scarcity. And then, while they last, creates the urgency. It's such a classic marketing tool for one simple reason: it just works. It pushes our emotional buttons and gets us to decide quickly before our logical brain has a chance to catch up.
The halo effect is such a wild cognitive shortcut our brains take. When we see someone as positive in just one area, like say they're really well dressed or they speak well, our brain just kind of assumes they're probably great in other, totally unrelated areas too. It's amazing how that first impression can cast this positive halo over everything else they do.
Now, let's look at two really clever ways to frame value. On one hand, you've got anchoring. This is where you drop a high initial number, like asking for a huge salary at first, just to make the next number you give seem way more reasonable. The contrast principle is similar, but it's about direct comparison. You show someone a $500 jacket, and then suddenly, the $300 one next to it looks like a steal. Both tricks are designed to mess with our perception of what something's actually worth.
All right, now we get to the really direct stuff. These are the strategies that are explicitly designed to get someone to say yes. This part is all about the art of the ask. I love this slide because it shows two techniques that are basically polar opposites. With foot in the door, you start with a tiny request to get a small yes. Once they've committed, it's way easier to get them to agree to a much bigger request later. Door in the face is the exact reverse. You make a ridiculously large request that you know they'll say no to. Then, when you follow up with your smaller actual request, they feel obligated to say yes to be reasonable. Okay, get ready for this one, because it feels completely backward. We usually think that if we do favors for someone, it'll make them like us more.
But the Benjamin Franklin effect flips that whole idea on its head. When someone does a favor for you, their brain has to justify it. Why did I just help that person? And the easiest answer is, well, I must like them. It's a crazy example of how our actions can literally change our own feelings.
And finally, we have the surprising power of because. You won't believe this, but studies have found that just using the word because and giving any reason, it doesn't even have to be a good one, dramatically increases the chance someone will agree to your request. Our brains are just wired to respond to the format of a reason, and we often don't even pay attention to the reason itself. It's just one little word, but it has a massive impact.
So, we've talked about how to build connections, how to shape perceptions, and how to persuade. But all of this brings us back to the most critical part of this whole conversation, the ethics of it all.
And that brings us full circle, right back to that critical warning from the beginning. Look, the line between ethical influence and straight-up manipulation is razor thin. If you use these strategies to trick or exploit people, it is almost guaranteed to backfire and destroy trust. Knowing how these tools work isn't just about power. It's a huge responsibility.
Which, of course, leaves us with the biggest question of all. Now that you understand the mechanics behind this stuff, where do you draw the line? Is it all about your intention, or is it about the outcome? That's definitely something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.